I want to tell you about a woman who had everything and a man who had exactly enough, and what happened when those two worlds meet on a cobblestone street that refused to be torn apart.
She is Navara Kensington, a woman who built an empire floor by floor, deal by deal, sacrifice by sacrifice, until the only thing left to conquer was a cobblestone street in Baltimore that refused to move. He is Han Seo-jun, third generation. Grease at the knuckles, 60 years of history behind him, and not a single reason to say yes to a woman who has never once been told no. Together, they are everything that should not work, and everything that was always supposed to happen. Navara Kensington brings the power, the precision, and the hunger of a woman who forgot what it felt like to want something she could not buy. Han Seo-jun brings the stillness, the strength, and the kind of quiet that gets louder the longer you sit inside it. This is their story. The 42nd floor does not smell like anything. That is the thing nobody warns you about. Every place Navara Kensington has ever been had a smell. Her grandmother's kitchen, pine sol and fried plantains, the shared office she worked in at 23 that smelled like burned coffee and ambition. But up here, nothing. 68 degrees, recycled air, filters that cost more per month than most people's car notes. A room that has forgotten what season it is. She has lived in this building for 4 years. She is only noticing that right now. The acquisition closed at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. 31 months of legal back and forth, 2 injunctions, and a number with 9 digits she had written on a post-it note and stuck inside her desk drawer, so she would not forget what winning was going to cost her. Her attorney called. She took it standing at the window. Baltimore spread out 42 floors below her in a grid of orange streetlights and black water. She said, "Good." Hung up. Stood there 4 more minutes, waiting to feel something that matched the size of what she had just done. It did not come. Muckas had left the rust, an iron file on her desk before he went home. Printed because she still thought better on paper. Satellite photos, zoning maps, a short note in his handwriting, last holdout, one owner being difficult. She flipped to the photos. Cobblestone streets, the real kind, uneven and old, worn smooth by 100 years of weight passing over them. Red brick buildings with iron fixtures gone rust at the joints. A mechanic shop on the corner with a hand-painted sign above the bay doors. Esios Auto and Iron, ESD, 1961. She looked at it longer than she meant to. There was something about the way that shop sat on the corner, like it had decided, a long time ago, that it was not moving. She had seen that posture before. In her grandmother. In herself, once, before she learned to turn it into something profitable. She went the next morning. No assistant. No town car. She drove herself. And she noticed that too, the same way you notice a habit you dropped without meaning to. The GPS pulled her off the expressway and into streets her tires did not know. Cobblestone catching under the wheels in a low, rolling grind, the vibration coming up through the seat into her palms. She rolled the window down. Salt air. Engine oil. Somewhere close, something metal hitting metal in a slow, patient rhythm. Clink, clink, clink. The neighborhood working. Not for her. Not for anyone. Just working. Navara pulled to the curb across from the shop, cut the engine, and sat with her hands still on the wheel. A pair of legs stuck out from under a car in the open bay. She had done this 47 times in 11 years. Walked into a place. Made an offer. Left with what she came for. She sat there a full minute before she reached for the door. Like some quiet, inconvenient part of her already knew, this one was going to be different. "You're blocking my bay." No hello. No good morning. No pause to register who she was, or what she was wearing, or what the car she drove said about the kind of woman standing in his garage door. Just that, flat, unbothered, and aimed at her like it was simply a fact about the world he needed corrected. Navarra Kensington had walked into rooms that went quiet when she entered them. She had never walked into one where the man did not even come out from under the car. She stepped to the left. A pair of boots shifted under the Datsun, the sound of something being torqued down, slow and deliberate. Then nothing. She waited. She was not accustomed to waiting. "I'm here to speak with the owner," she said. "Speaking. Your hand, Seo-jun. You're still in my light." She moved again. This time further left, until she was standing against the wall beside a pegboard of tools hung in outlines, every one of them in its exact place. Wrenches small to large, sockets in rows, nothing missing, nothing out of order. The kind of organized that is not about neatness. The kind that comes from knowing, without looking, exactly where your hands need to go. He came out from under the car at his own pace. Not slowly to make a point. Just at his own pace. He was taller than she had expected from the legs. Broad through the shoulders, in a way that his worn navy coveralls did not hide. Hands wrapped in a shop rag, grease dark at the knuckles. He looked at her the way you look at weather. Not impressed by it. Not threatened by it. Just accounting for it. "Navarra Kensington," she said, and held out her hand. He looked at the shop rag in his own hand, then back at her. "You want to shake this?" She held her ground. "I've had worse on my hands." Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. The shape a smile would leave behind if it decided not to show up. He shook her hand. Firm, brief, and then gone. She made the offer clean. No preamble, no flattery. She had learned a long time ago that both of those things made people feel like they were being managed, and people who felt managed dug in. She told him the number. She watched his face. His face did not do anything. "No," he said. "I haven't finished." The number was the finish, he said. Everything before it was just noise. He turned back to the car. Not dismissive. She had been dismissed before and it felt different, smaller, like being looked through. This was something else. This was a man who had simply made a decision and saw no reason to perform it. She stood in the bay door for a moment after he went back under. The harbor wind came off the docks and moved through the garage. Salt and oil and something older than both of them. "I'll come back," she said. "Bud, be open," he said from under the car. She walked back to her car, sat in the driver's seat, looked at the hand-painted sign above the doors for a long moment. 47 deals in 11 years. This was the first time she had driven away with nothing, and somehow still felt like the conversation was not over. When did she stop knowing the names of anyone who wasn't on her payroll? She did not ask it out loud. She asked it somewhere behind her sternum, sitting in her car on the far end of Seo Street with the engine off and her blazer folded on the passenger seat. Like she had come here on purpose, which she had, but not in any way she could have explained to Marcus or her board or anyone who knew her as the woman she had spent 15 years building. It was a Friday. She told herself she was observing the district. She told herself that a lot. The neighborhood moved differently on Fridays. Slower. Not lazy. There is a difference, and the Rust and Iron district knew it. The fish market 2 blocks down had a line out the door by noon. Old men with folding carts. A woman in church clothes buying something wrapped in brown paper. The boxing gym next to Han's shop had its roll-up door open, and through it she could see teenagers, maybe 14, 15, moving around a heavy bag in that clumsy, earnest way that means they are new to it and not embarrassed yet. Someone's speaker, playing something she half recognized from a long time ago. She sat and watched all of it like a woman who had forgotten she used to belong to a place before she belonged to a portfolio. She did not see Han until he was already across the street. No coveralls. Dark jeans, a gray Henley pushed to the elbows, a paper bag from the fish market in one hand. He moved through the block the way water moves through a space it knows. Not in a hurry, stopping twice. Once to say something to the old man outside the hardware store that made the man laugh hard enough to grab the doorframe. Once to crouch down to eye level with a little girl who held up a drawing for him to look at. He looked at the drawing like it mattered. Like he had time for it. Like time was something he still owned. He saw her car on the way back. She considered pulling off. She did not. He walked over, stood at the passenger window, and looked in at the empty seat where her blazer was folded. "No briefcase today," he said. "Observing," she said. "From your car. It's a public street." He was quiet for a moment, not suspicious, just reading something in her face she was not sure she meant to put there. "You eat," he said. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." She ate with him on the steps of the shop. Paper plates. Fried whiting and something pickled she did not catch the name of but ate all of anyway. They did not talk about the building. Not once. He asked her where she grew up and she told him, and the telling of it felt like pulling something out of a drawer she had not opened in a long time, a little stiff, a little surprised at itself. She left before dark, drove back to the 42nd floor, stood at the window and looked out at the harbor, and could not, for the life of her, remember what she had been so sure about before she came. My grandfather bought his first torque wrench at a police auction in 1959. He did not say it like an opening. He said it like a fact he had been carrying around long enough that it no longer needed a frame around it. Navarra was sitting on the same overturned crate as last time. She had started to think of it as hers, which was a strange thing to notice about yourself, that you had begun to claim a corner of someone else's space. Han was at the workbench with his back half to her, cleaning a part she could not name with a cloth that had long since given up being clean. She did not say anything. She had learned, by now, that he did not leave silences that needed filling. He told her about the auction, the way you tell a story you did not know you were going to tell. Slow, a little careful at the edges. His grandfather had come over from Busan with $30 and a trade, and the particular stubbornness of a man who had already survived things that were supposed to finish him. The wrench cost $4. The loan for the shop space came from a black church 3 blocks from where they were sitting right now, a congregation that had nothing to spare and gave it anyway because they recognized in him something they recognized in themselves. The need to build something that would still be standing when you were gone. "The church is gone," Han said. "What happened to it?" "Development," he said. He said it without looking at her. She felt it land anyway. She had come with a counter-proposal. New numbers, better terms, a relocation package her attorney had described as generous. The folder was in her bag. It stayed there. Something about taking it out right now felt like tracking mud across a floor someone had just cleaned. Technically allowed, deeply wrong. "You could rebuild somewhere else," she said, because she was still, somewhere underneath everything, the woman who closed deals. "No," he said, "I couldn't." "The shop, yes. Same equipment, same sign." "It's not the equipment." He set down the part, turned and looked at her directly, the way he did sometimes, like he was not just answering her question, but also deciding how much of the answer she had actually earned. "My grandfather fixed cars for 40 years in this building," he said. "My father fixed cars for 30. I've been here 22. You put that somewhere else, it's just a garage." She looked at the walls. She had not really looked before. Photographs, old ones, tucked into the frame of a corkboard above the tool chest. A man in coveralls who had Han's jaw and Han's stillness, standing in front of the bay doors when the sign was still new. A younger version of those same doors. A city that had grown up around them and not moved them. She sat with that for a moment. She did not agree with him. She was not sure anymore that disagreeing was the point. She reached into her bag and left the folder there. "Tell me about your father," she said instead. Han looked at her for a long beat. Then he pulled up a stool.
Hello, don't skip. This part matters. Comment where you're watching from and your thoughts below in the comment section. Let's proceed into the full story.
She was already arguing when her feet hit the cobblestone. Phone at her ear, heels finding the gaps in the stone with the particular aggression of a woman who had stopped caring whether the shoes survived. "I understand the timeline, David. I built the timeline." Wind off the harbor, cutting through her coat. "Then push the Meridian meeting. I don't care, push it to Thursday." The smell of the district hitting her before she had even crossed the street. Salt and iron, and something frying somewhere she could not see. She hung up before David finished his sentence. She had learned a long time ago that some conversations end better when you are the one who ends them. The board had voted that morning. Not against her, they were not brave enough for that yet. But they had voted to accelerate the rust and iron acquisition by 6 weeks, which was the board's way of telling her that patience had a price, and they had stopped being willing to pay it. 6 weeks. She had been coming to this block for almost 2 months. She had eaten on those steps. She had listened to a man talk about his grandfather, like the man was still in the room. She pushed that to the back somewhere and walked through the bay doors. Han was at the engine of a truck she did not recognize. He did not look up. "New number," she said. He reached for a socket wrench without answering. She told him the number. It was 30% higher than the last one. Her attorney had called it a statement offer, the kind of number that closes a room. Han turned the wrench once, twice, set it down and looked at her with an expression that was almost patient. The way a teacher looks at a student who keeps giving the same wrong answer and has not yet understood that the answer is wrong. "You think this is about money," he said. "Everything has a number. You believe that. I built a career on it." "Yeah," he said, "I can tell." It was not cruel. That was the thing that stayed with her afterward. He did not say it to cut her. He said it the way you say something that is simply true, the way you'd say it's cold out or that tire's low. Just a fact about her that he had noticed. She stood there with the new offer hanging between them like a door nobody was going to walk through. Han picked up a wrench from the tray beside him. Held it out to her, handle first. "You know how to use one of these." She looked at it. Flat jaw, worn grip, the weight of something that had done real work for a long time. She did not answer. Not because she didn't know, but because the question was not really about the wrench, and they both understood that, standing 3 feet apart in a garage that smelled like oil and history, the harbor wind pushing through the bay doors between them. She did not take it. Not yet. She never told anyone about the apartment on Decatur Street. Not her board. Not Marcus. Not the therapist she saw for 8 months at 29 and stopped seeing because the woman kept asking her to slow down. And Navarra did not know yet that slowing down was something a person could survive. 3rd floor walk-up. Radiator that clanged all winter. A window that looked out over a laundromat. It was the last place she remembered being broke and not being afraid of it. She has not thought about that apartment in 6 years. She is thinking about it now, sitting on an overturned crate in Han Seo-jun's garage while rain comes off the harbor in sheets and her car sits somewhere on the other side of it. She had not planned to stay. She came to drop off a revised document. A softer approach her attorney suggested, paperwork instead of pressure. She was going to leave it on the workbench and go. Then the sky opened up. Not polite rain. The kind that comes in sideways off the water, that turns the cobblestones into a shallow river, that soaks through a good coat in under a minute and does not care what the coat cost. Han looked at the bay doors. Looked at her. said nothing. He just pulled a second crate from behind the tool chest and set it down. That was the invitation. They talked the way people talk when the weather has taken the exit route away. No agenda. No strategy. Just two people in a dry space, while everything outside was loud and wet. He told her about learning to drive in this garage at 13, his father's hand over his on the gear shift, the particular patience of a man teaching something he loved to someone he loved more. She told him about the apartment on Decatur Street. She did not plan to. It came out somewhere between the second hour and the third, the way things come out when you have run out of the careful version of yourself. The broke years, the ramen and the spreadsheets, and the one good blazer she wore to every meeting and dry cleaned with money she did not have. The feeling, back then, of wanting something so hard it was almost a physical thing in her chest. Han listened the way he did everything. Fully, without rushing her toward a point. "You still have that feeling," he said. She thought about it honestly, which was not something she did often. "I don't know," she said. "I think I built so much on top of it I can't find it anymore." He nodded like that made sense. Like he had been watching her look for it, without knowing that was what she was doing. The rain slowed around 10. She stood up, found her coat, looked for something to say that was equal to the last 3 hours. Nothing was. "The documents on the bench," she said. "I know," he said. She walked out into the wet street. The cobblestones dark and gleaming, the harbor still moving somewhere in the dark, the clink of the shop signs swaying once in the leftover wind. She did not look back, but she walked slower than she usually did. Like something in her had decided, without asking permission, that there was no reason to rush back to the 42nd floor tonight. 6 months from now, she will stand at a press conference on the steps of City Hall with her hands folded, and her face arranged into the expression she has worn to every hard moment in her career. Calm, prepared, unreadable. A reporter will ask her if she has any regrets about the Rust and Iron District. She will pause for exactly 1 second. And she will say, "We made the decision we felt was right at the time." It will be the most dishonest sentence she has ever spoken into a microphone. But that is 6 months from now. Right now, it is a Tuesday morning, and her name is in the headline. She found out the way everyone else did. Marcus forwarded it at 7:04 a.m. with no subject line. Just the link, and below it, in his careful way, a single sentence. "Wanted you to see this before your phone starts. Kensington Development moves to demolish historic Rust and Iron District. RESID and TS respond." She read it standing in her kitchen in bare feet, coffee going cold beside her. The article had quotes from 3 residents she recognized. The woman who sold fish on Fridays. The man from the hardware store. A teenager from the boxing gym who had spelled her name wrong but gotten everything else exactly right. She drove to the district that afternoon. She told herself she was going to explain. The timeline, the board, the pressure she had been absorbing for months. The things that happen between a decision and a headline that nobody prints because they are not dramatic enough to be news. She had the explanation ready. She had rehearsed it in the car. The cobblestones felt different under her feet this time. Nobody held a door. The fish market woman looked at her and looked away. Not with anger, which Navarra could have handled. With the specific tiredness of someone who had expected this and is not surprised, just finished. Han was in the bay. Same as always. She stood in the door and gave him the explanation she had rehearsed. The board vote, the accelerated timeline, the way these things build pressure until they move whether you push them or not. She said all of it. He listened with his arms crossed and his eyes on her face, not the floor, not the middle distance. Her face. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know." 2 words. No heat in them. No accusation. Just, "I know." Like he had already understood every piece of what she said before she said it. Like he had seen it coming from the day she first walked into his bay. And had let himself believe anyway, which was not her fault and not his, and somehow still sat between them like something broken on the floor of the garage. She had been prepared for him to be angry. Anger she knew how to stand inside. This was different. This was a man who was not surprised. And that was the thing she was going to have to drive home with. The district smells different at night. The fish market is closed, the salt's still there but quieter, layered under something woodier, something that comes off the old brick when the temperature drops and the walls give back the heat they collected all day. Engine oil. The faint iron smell of the docks. And underneath all of it, something she does not have a name for. The particular smell of a place that has been itself for a very long time and has not apologized for it. She has driven to this street in daylight, in rain, in the blue-gray of early morning. She has never come at night. She is not entirely sure what that means, except that the woman who came here the first time with a briefcase and a rehearsed number would not have done it. The board meeting had ended 3 hours ago. She had stood at the head of the table and pulled the rust and iron acquisition off the agenda herself. Clean, direct, no theater. She laid out what it would cost the firm in the short term. She did not dress it up. David had looked at her the way people look at someone they thought they understood, and have just realized they did not. Not angry yet. Still processing. The vote to reduce her majority share came 40 minutes later. She had sat through it with her hands flat on the table and her face giving nothing away, which was the last time tonight she was going to perform being fine. She drove home, stood in her apartment for 11 minutes, then got back in the car. The shop light was on. That low amber spill from the side window that she had come to recognize the way you recognize a particular lamp in a particular room of a house you have spent time in. She sat in the car across the street. The cobblestones were dry tonight, pale under the streetlight. The sign above the bay doors still, no wind to move it. She did not have a speech. She had not rehearsed anything. For the first time in longer than she could accurately remember, she was walking toward something without knowing what came next. And the fear of that was smaller than she expected. Smaller than the other thing. She knocked on the side door. The one she had seen him use. The one that meant the bay was closed, but the building was not. Footsteps. A pause, like he was deciding something. The door opened. Han looked at her, the way he had looked at her from the very beginning. Not through her, not past her. At her. Taking in the fact of her standing on his step at night, without a bag, without an offer, without the careful armor of everything she usually brought to this street. He read all of it in about 2 seconds. She watched him decide what it meant. "You hungry?" he said. Not "Are you okay?" Not "What happened?" Not "I told you so," which she would have deserved and he would never have said. Just that. Simple and warm and exactly enough. "Yeah," she said. "Come in," he said. And she did. "You're still blocking my light." She looked up from the invoice she was reading and moved the crate 6 inches to the left without looking down at it. The way you move around furniture in a room you know by feel now. Han made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but was adjacent to one. 3 months ago, she had stood in the same bay door not knowing if he would open it. Now she had a crate. Now she knew which one was hers. The new firm had 7 people in it. Small enough to fit in a converted row house 4 blocks from the district. Brick exterior, original floors, a conference table she had bought second-hand from a restaurant that was closing. No 42nd floor. No recycled air at 68 degrees. The office smelled like coffee and old wood, and on Fridays when the wind was right, faintly of salt off the harbor. She was still getting used to that. The smelling things part. How much she had missed it without knowing she was missing it. The district was still standing. That was not a small thing, and she did not treat it like one. There were still lawyers involved. The city, the original development consortium, two parties she had never personally liked and no longer had to pretend to. It was going to take time. But the cobblestones were still there, and the iron fixtures, and the hand-painted sign above the bay doors that had been there since 1961 and apparently intended to be there considerably longer. Han came out from under the car at his own pace. Same as always. Shop rag in his hand, grease at the knuckles. Some things did not change, and she had stopped wanting them to. He looked at the invoice she was holding. "You're working in my garage again. Your Wi-Fi is better than mine." "I don't have Wi-Fi." "I know," she said. "It's very peaceful." He looked at her for a moment with that expression she had spent the first month trying to read and had eventually understood was just him. Present, unhurried, seeing exactly what was in front of him and not performing anything about it. "You eating Friday?" he said. "When do I not eat Friday?" "Wanted to ask." "You always want to ask," she said. "You always already know the answer." He turned back to the car. She went back to the invoice. The shop settled around them the way it did. The low tick of something cooling in the engine, the distant rhythm of the boxing gym next door, the particular afternoon light coming through the bay doors at an angle that turned the concrete floor almost gold. She had built a career on forward motion. On the next number, the next deal, the next floor of the next building going up. She was learning slowly. The way you learn something that does not come naturally, with patience and repetition and a willingness to be wrong about it for a while. That some things were worth staying inside of. The clink of a wrench on concrete. The smell of coffee from next door. The light on the floor. This.
If you find this story interesting, then you know there is more where this came from. Kindly hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next story.